it could be a 5-figure mistake. Every truck we build starts with one of these, a brand new chassis. But there are 5 things that a lot of people don't really talk about, and we're gonna make sure that you understand what they are so that you can actually finish the build. When purchasing a chassis, your wheels will determine the axle, not the other way around. Well, what does that mean? I've bought a lot of chassis, and over the years, it shows up and we put wheels on it, we get the wheels to fit, and the customer's like, I don't like the way the wheels look. And next thing you know, it has nothing to do with the wheels we purchased, but it had everything to do with the fact that we bought wheels after we already had an axle. And so talk about a disaster. Out come the axle. We had to shorten it down. We had to get new axles, send the wheels back and get them rehooped. That cost the customer and us, it was several thousands of dollars. One question, what are you going to do for wheels in the back? Holy cow, that would actually save us a lot of grief. So when we have a conversation with you, we're discussing what the plan is. You know, how much meat are you wanting in the back? Are you gonna have to widen the tub? Like if you take a look at this here, I've only got so much. I'm probably gonna fit like a 9-inch wheel back here. That's all I got. But if you're gonna have 500 horsepower, that might not be enough tread. And so like if you see here, we put a small inner tub was a recommendation. So we didn't have any fabrication. We could leave the stock, but a tiny little mini tub on the inside to give us a little bit more room so that we could narrow the rear end and get a nicer looking wheel to fit on it. And so that's all that you're trying to accomplish is get the right meat. Then up front, it comes down to selecting the right wheel and the right backspace. And a lot of that's gonna come down to what you want, turning it, testing it, and make sure it clears. Well, on a chassis that's this height, it's actually not too hard to figure out, but it can get a lot more complicated than this. And let me go show you what that looks like over here. So this is a little bit more complicated because this truck is low to the ground. I mean, we're running about 5.5 inches off the ground, and we are tucking about a 12-inch tire back here. And so we've had to do a little bit of fabrication in the bed to make all this happen. But your tolerances right here start to become really critical, and we wanted to have a little bit deeper dish here, which if you want to have a wider lip, you're going to have a narrower axle, and so that becomes really important on selecting the right size housing to make sure that you can accomplish this. Otherwise, it's going to be pushed way out here and it'll look a little bit weird. Let's pick the right housing for you, and that'll save you a lot of grief later. Probably want to know what should be included in your chassis, but more importantly, what isn't included in your chassis. So we're gonna bring Spencer in. He's head of sales here. We're gonna talk numbers.
I like numbers.
You like numbers. Spencer likes numbers. So we've seen all kinds of quotes that customers have sent us. One thing I've learned is not all chassis quotes are created equally. What have you found?
I think that one of the biggest mistakes that customers make is they just go to the bottom dollar amount on the quote and they're comparing that. But the question you should ask yourself is, are these quotes for the same product?
And because that's what's dictating a lot of costs. I find that a lot of chassis companies are probably within 10 to 20%. If you got a quote that's half price, well, you might want to ask more questions.
From that point, it's important to look at the quote that you received and actually pick apart what's actually included here.
So we've got this complete solution here. So here it is. This is a 1953, 1956 chassis. What are some things, that are standard here that are not so standard on someone else?
For example, front sway bar. A lot of companies will charge you separately for that. Your rack and pinion, people will charge you separately. Obviously, your disc brakes, your ball joints, your spindles, your upper and lower control arms. All of these little components are really easy to miss in the build process when you build something out, because if you never built one of these before, how would you know any better? The list can go on and on, especially your motor and transmission mounts. Are those something that are included for you? And if not, is the person that you're buying the chassis from actually listening to you and paying attention to what your needs are?
Come check this 4-wheel drive chassis out. On our 4-wheel drives, you get front and rear sway bars.
Yeah.
That's standard. All your engine mounts are going to be standard. The cradle for the engine that comes standard. And you also get a skid plate. A
big complaint that we hear a lot that we've tried really hard to account for is your front steering setup. The steering slop never seems to go away if you don't handle that up front correctly. So having these big, massive billet RPM steering linkages here, that's a big deal for us.
These fully loaded chassis, this is saving a shop probably about $6,000 to $8,000 of shop labor.
It's really important that we know what the intention is and we build it that way, because if we're selling you a 4x4 frame and it's have fun, have a good day, and we didn't know that they were running Whippled Godzilla 10-speed electronic transfer case, what is the likelihood that your front rear drive shafts don't have the right operating angle? Yeah. So again, even if we're not supplying the complete solution, it's important that we understand what the goal is and we're building a setup that is actually designed for that application, because that will all matter and it will all cost you money at the end of the day.
how was the chassis designed and what was it engineered around? We build trucks here, we build vehicles here, and we build the chassis that go underneath them, which means we're constantly testing and testing and testing and building and building and building so that the products that we are designing and sending out with the chassis, we have built trucks around those, which is much different. And so a lot of different ways to build a chassis. And what I've noticed mostly, people are kind of driving towards what's going to be the cheapest way to build a chassis so that I can be the best priced on the market. Now, well, there's a lot to be said with that because some people like to buy their clothes at Walmart and other people like to buy it at Neiman Marcus, and you shop where you feel most comfortable, right? But obviously, when you're building a high-end truck or any truck that you're dumping money into, the foundation and that architecture we already talked about becomes really important, and what it's made out of. So I got some steel here that's pretty rusty. I haven't had a tetanus shot for a few years. All right, so let's talk about this right here is a rectangle tubing. It's got a weld seam right here, and it's made out of 10 gauge. This is a very, very common product, and a lot of companies are using this, and they'll do what they call mandrel bending, which you'll put it in a machine, and it's gonna contour the metal and bend it, create a frame rail. The struggle with that is that everywhere the outer bend is, it's thinning it down. And so on 10 gauge, it's about 1/8 of an inch thick, maybe just a little bit under. It's pretty solid, but the problem is when you're mandrel bending, it actually is hard to get them all exactly the same. So they're always just like, no frame rail is the same from chassis to chassis to chassis. But close isn't perfect. And when you're talking about how your sheet metal's gonna fit, how your suspension's gonna level out, really important that you get it identical. And another way to do it is to laser cut this, kind of pie cut it different ways, and then bend it, and then re-weld it back together. At Fat Fender Garage, we actually could have chosen any of those ways. Why did we not choose that way? Well, because we wanted to build it the best, right? So right out of the gate, we made some different decisions. And so we went to, oh, this is heavy, of course it's bigger. So all of our chassis are made out of 3/16 flat sheet steel that gets laser cut, gets formed, bent, and re-welded. Why do all that, Jason? Well, your chassis are gonna be a little bit more weight, probably a couple 100 pounds heavier. But the reality is we're not going for track time, and we're actually throwing a lot of horsepower at our chassis. And what we don't want is it to flex. We want it to be nice and rigid because we want the suspension to do the job. We don't want any flexing in our frame rails. So what are the technical statistics behind this? Well, it's 39% more steel. That's why it weighs more. It's also up to 3 times stronger than a mandrel bent or a laser cut chassis. Now, that might seem like tomato, and it doesn't really matter because I'm just gonna put a 302 motor in it. And actually, you're right, those chassis will be just fine for you. But most people that we've come across, they're throwing Coyote motors in them, they're throwing a Whipple supercharger on them, we're throwing Godzillas in it, there's a lot of torque, there's a lot of power. So it's important for us that your chassis feels grounded and planted, that it has a little bit of extra weight to it. I mean, having an extra couple 100 pounds is really helpful for getting traction, but at the same time, we want to let the suspension do the work. We want to feel like we're driving it and it's rigid and we're just like grounded. So, but let's go for a drive. Like, the most important thing is let's take you along for the ride and see what you think. All right, we should go for a drive and let's have some fun. But it just handles. It handles and it just, no body roll. I've driven a lot of chassis and I hear a lot of shops say they build the best chassis. And so as they should say that, right? You should believe in your product. We've built on everybody's chassis and we've used everybody's chassis. And not all those companies can say that about us. I mean, this thing is stuck to the ground. It handles so well, changes lanes so good, no body roll, just flat. And I like a chassis that has a little extra weight to it too, because trucks are so light. I mean, we're barely pushing, let's say on a truck like this, barely getting to 3,900 pounds. And so you're already just really light to begin with. And at the end of the day, you've got a lot of horsepower on a light truck. What you definitely do not want is you definitely do not want any movement of the chassis. You want that to stay level, true, and just let the suspension do it and not have the motor causing extra movement and flex. And so this works out perfect. Nobody's responsible when it doesn't fit. Somebody calling, They've got a problem and they need help. We didn't even build the chassis. So, all right, I'm gonna give you two quick stories. One, we had somebody call us up. They bought a chassis from a company and they told them what engine they were using. The chassis shows up, said engine goes in, and engine does not fit. The oil pan's a problem, the top of the engine's a problem. There's a lot of problems. The question is what's the solution? And the solution was not what they wanted to hear, and it was very expensive. And so they called me and said, hey, Jason, what can you help? And quite honestly, we didn't have a lot of solutions for them because the way it was designed and put together, that should have been communicated way up front. The next thing that we ran into is another chassis company. Engine fit, but the location of the engine didn't allow for any headers that they could find anywhere. And so right here, headers become really important that you can get linkage and steering to it. So it becomes very challenging. Come check this out over here. This set of headers is pretty cool. Look how this curves around so that the steering shaft can go straight through up here into the column. Now, how do we know that works? Well, we've built trucks. We like to have a direct shot. We don't have to put a heim joint and split it up. And so we designed the headers to work with the chassis so that you can actually finish the build. Very, very important thing. So whether it's an oil pan, headers, engine location, even a brake booster. Let me show you one more thing. We have found that when you install your brake booster, that can also be really, really tight. And there's not a lot, especially a Coyote motor, they're close. We even had a customer who sent us his truck and he had a hard time with our parts fitting it in. He just didn't know that it was close. And it is close. We had about 3/16 of clearance, and that's about all he had. He didn't have his sheet metal lined up very correctly. And so by the time we lined all the sheet metal, got them up nice and square, everything fit just like it was supposed to, but it's tight. And so we had to engineer several different brackets for different ride heights. A lot of people like to say, talk to your engine builder, talk to your builder, talk to your fab guy, talk to this, like they'll figure it out. We do not have that approach. We do chassis because we do everything else. We want everything to be precisely accurate all the way through. It's really important that you get the right chassis that makes it simple for you all the way through the end, not one that's fighting you right up front. They probably haven't told you that the way they built your chassis may be obsolete in the next 20 years. Well, why would I say that? Well, because guess what? I'm gonna guess in 20 years, a lot's gonna be different. Even in 5 years. I mean, we experience it from Gen 3 Coyotes to a Gen 4 Coyote. That's even different. The exhaust manifold's different. And as the changes keep evolving, we'll keep evolving with all the changes, make sure it's current. Well, some of the ways we do that are on the chassis. Let me kind of show you some things that we do differently. You can see we've been cutting a lot of parts, a lot of stuff being bent, a lot of chassis being designed. And so one of the things that's kind of cool about these chassis is that all of our motor mounts, body mounts, they're all bolted on. But we've also had a friend of ours, he built a truck and he did all the fabrication on it. When he went to put the sheet metal on, his bed floor that he put in was 1 inch too low. And so it hit the rear cross member of the chassis. He's like, what do I do? And I'm like, well, we're gonna make you new body mounts and we're gonna raise it 1 inch. And so we were able to, send them all out. He bolted it on, got the truck on there, perfect. He didn't have to cut anything off that was welded on. A lot of shops are welding a lot of things on, which is easier and is cheaper. I'm not gonna lie, but it's adaptable. And so when we talk about being obsolete, if you decide in 5 years you want to change your motor out and go from a 302 or a 360, 390 or a 350 Chevy motor or whatever it is you got in, and you want to put the latest and greatest fuel injection in it, guess what? We've already got the brackets and hardware for you to change that motor out, bolt it right in, you'll be ready to go. And that's what we find really important, is that our chassis are adaptable to what we are going to want in the future. I can show you what we're talking about here. I'll let anybody know that I'm touching this, but these get bolted on just like this. And they'll get bolted on right here, and then you get mounts to go in there. So very easy to use, very robust. I mean, if you look at the girth of these things here and the metal, they're heavy. And when you're building a chassis, you want everything to be solid, but also adaptable. So those are the 5 things. I hope that's been helpful for you, and I hope at the end of the day, as you're choosing a chassis company, that you'll choose a company that fits you the best in your needs, right? With that, happy hot rodding. Take care.